This is the guidance film to support Year 11, Year 10 GCSE students studying history, but also a lot of the content is generic for all GCSEs, certainly those subjects with very high information content, English, the sciences, geography, as well as history. As we go through this, the video is going to allude to resources that you will find in the file on the shared area where you are probably watching this video. So therefore you can find these particular resources and then use them and deploy them as you see fit. If you are reading and watching this and looking in this file for the first time at Easter prior to your GCSEs, I would suggest that you plan your remaining time remarkably quickly. Revision isn't quick and it isn't fun. It takes a lot of time and it isn't easy. There is no information in this video that will give you an easy route through your revision process. But the new exams, for all their rigour, they will reward hard work. Couple of myths then first. Myth number one, you don't need to revise. I always do well in the lessons and I will cram the night before. Well, if you like playing Russian roulette with your future, that might be an appropriate route. Unless you get lucky with the content that you cram and the content that comes up in the exam, you are taking a chance and you will jeopardize and risk passing the exam. Effective revision is a long-term process. It goes hand in hand with you doing well in your lessons and then consolidating what you have learnt through your revision. Rereading notes is the best way to revise. Research has shown that rereading has inconsistent effects on student learning and that benefits are not long-lasting. It creates reader fluency, but not understanding. It's quite possible that the notes you're referring to may not even be your own notes. They have been produced for you. Okay? Therefore, reading notes is passive. Your revision for it to be effective must be active and engaging the brain. Thirdly, highlighting. It only works if you work for a stationer who is making money out of you selling you these pens. It is ineffective. You are reinforcing your literacy. You are determining the 20% of relevant information on a page from the 80% that is often irrelevant. But it is nothing more than that. It is the start of a process, not the end of a process. It can, however, be developed further if the highlighting that you are undertaking is done for a specific purpose, looking for specific information. So therefore, highlighting in different colors obviously is engaging a higher order of thinking because you are categorizing and analyzing as you go. Revision is all about remembering facts. This is understandably a myth that is going to evolve certainly in history and other knowledge-heavy subjects. Even if you know how to answer a certain style of question, if you don't know what you're talking about, you're stuck. However, only revising knowledge means that you will therefore not be able to apply that knowledge effectively to the question. Remembering facts, for example, here on the right, the Bauhaus style of architecture in Weimar, Germany in the 1930s. That's great. But that knowledge and recalling that knowledge is useless unless you can apply it. We have to be careful that you go into an exam ready to pass an exam and not succeed in a pub quiz. Students spend far too much time learning content and not practicing exam technique. And yet your teachers know you cannot do the exam technique without the knowledge. And therefore, the bulk of what you are taught in lessons will be content. A lot more of your homework will have been exam practice. You'll never ever practice enough exam technique. Ideally, you're watching this knowing a lot of the knowledge and you can red, amber, green what you know so you can now prioritize doing something with the knowledge that you have learnt and applying it to your exam questions. And finally, music, IT, iPads, smartphones, music, TV, Netflix, all of these are distractions. Sorry, non-negotiable. What was trendy and called the Mozart effect a couple of years ago has been disproven. It does not help you revise. You need to remove all distractions when you revise to make sure the time you spend revising is completely focused and purposeful. So, our effective revision stages. We've broken it down into 5 here, and this will refer to content in the file that you are looking at on the shared area, or materials that you as a student or parents that your children have already been given. Number 1 then, understand the syllabus content. Now certainly in history we have these matrices. Your students will have them. More often than not they're on the front of the booklets that they've been using. This is the syllabus broken down into its key elements. Your knowledge of, in this case, this is Germany 1919 to 1939. Your knowledge might be far more comprehensive than that required from your children. You may have studied at A level. They need to know what is on the list here. Now, the idea of this is that they read each of the statements and then they RAG, they rag it. Red for no idea, and one would hope that was to do with absence. Amber, they understand, they have a knowledge of what is being spoken about, but they would be rather hopeful that the teacher asks a question to someone else. And green, that they are secure, and therefore that knowledge only requires the briefest of recaps. You may even want to break that down and actually color code the statements themselves, because there might be elements within each of those sections that are stronger than others. That is what they need to know. I tell you now, parents, as you go through how much they need to know for 1 GCSE, and then you multiply it by 8 or 9 GCSEs, how surprised you will be at the content that they need to know. We then would ask them to expand upon that knowledge by reading the core knowledge in these knowledge organisers. There are different types depending on preferences and possibly ability and understanding. These are also for you as parents. This will take the previous checklist, those matrices we just showed you on the previous slide, and flesh out the information that you need to know. It's very useful, because it puts the brakes on children getting too clever, recalling more and more information and going beyond what they need to know. If you want more information, if you want it published in a better format with more colour, then there are the revision guides. Once you have that knowledge, you then need to distill it down. You need to simmer it down. Summarize. Understand the big picture of what you're looking at and not the minutiae, not the small facts. To this end, most units that we start in history and in most other GCSEs, the teacher will always start off with an overview activity. Now, if the task is understood and approached by the students correctly, that we are trying to paint a broad picture and not a detailed one, then of course big picture lessons and overview lessons become productive. If, however, the student is not on board, not engaging with what the purpose of the activity is, what we end up is often with pretty, but particularly purposeless pieces of work. But the big picture, we then drill down into the detail. And here are some examples of students working their way through those kind of tasks. Another way of summarizing is flashcards or linear notes. We've spoken at great length to students about the simple rule of the classroom that teachers teach and learners learn. We have exposed your children to numerous ways of revising, of preparing their notes, and being able to test whether they work. By the time you reach year 10, year 11, you should have an idea. If you are still stumbling your way through what works, you've either not applied yourself properly to this task, or you're still deluding yourself with the belief that you are looking for that wonderfully simple way of investing very little time and ending up with wonderful revision notes. I can spare you the effort now, it doesn't exist. Flashcards, linear notes, see from the picture on the right, it's hard work. More often than not though, the people that do this, the people who work at it, get better results. The haves and have-nots in life can often be traced back to the dids and did-nots in life. The GCSE will record hard work. You may want to start flashcards by simply going back to the matrix document we showed you at the beginning, the checklist, and write down each of those separate points on the side of one flashcard. Prefix any one of those points with what was the, whatever it was, how were, why were, and on the reverse side of the card, write down the details. Then test yourself on that knowledge. But please be aware, we're still testing knowledge, not the application of knowledge. One way of doing this is to have your stack of flashcards in one pile. Test the student, test yourself. If you know it, put it into a second pile. If you don't, leave it in the first pile. Next time, come back, take the second pile, test yourself again. If you know it a third time, it goes into that third pile and it stays there. It is green, it is secure. And there, your three piles. Your reds that you don't know, your ambers that you aren't secure on, your greens that you are. Testing and retesting. Then go back to the knowledge organisers, versions of which you can find on the system that are now partially scaffolded. You should know the course, you should know the content, you should be able to populate your own knowledge organiser. Then ultimately, sit in front of a blank piece of paper. Identify your particular topic. What do you remember? By this point, it shouldn't be a random collection of facts. It should be organised and structured. If all you can still do is recall fact in random order, you simply have turned your brain into a sponge which you are wringing out of information. The skill now is to deploy that information in an organised and structured way, e.g. chronologically down here on the left or under the headings of a specific theme. How long should you revise for? That's a different thing for different people. As a GCSE student myself, an hour revising would have probably resulted in at best 10 minutes effective revision. Depending upon the time of the day, whether you've eaten, how well you've slept, your concentration levels lapse. Short, sharp revision is far more effective. 10-minute blocks with breaks. However, those breaks are not then to be rewarded with distractions like IT. Playing on your Xbox in between your revision doesn't work. Computers frazzle your brain. They wire your brain up differently. You have to avoid 21st century distractions because you are sitting a very 19th century exam. Content heavy that you have to learn. It's nothing to do with IT. Stay away from it. Revise and test yourself, interleaving and spaced learning. 10-minute chunks. 10 minutes of intense revision on one subject, then maybe an entirely different GCSE, and then back to the original topic, the original GCSE, but a different topic within it. Spaced learning. This is proven to be more effective with most people. You have to find out if it's effective for you. Here's the science, this interleaving and spaced learning. Memorize it, first reminder, second reminder, third reminder, fourth reminder. It becomes more effective. Constantly revisiting knowledge moves it from short-term memory to long-term memory. And if that wasn't hard work, now face the enemy, the exam paper. Complete past exam questions in time conditions. You will have been doing this through homeworks and class tests, but do it properly in front of papers from the exam board that you can download from the exam board. Then mark and review your answers. You should be, by year 11, fluent in the style required for each question route and where the marks can be gained and lost. For example, in history, terms like AO1, knowledge, and AO2, the skill required in applying that knowledge. How well do you do? Identify your strengths and your weaknesses, and then come back to your teacher, not with that wonderfully vacant question statement that completely irritates everyone, is that I don't know what I'm doing, but that I have a particular weakness with this or with that. Be an informed student about your strengths and weaknesses. Understand the exam syllabus and content, summarise the knowledge, revise and test, practice, mark and identify. And yet, if I'm talking to a parent whose child is not listening with them to this particular presentation, you have a hell of a confrontation on your hands. If I'm talking to a student and the parents aren't there to help, we've got a problem. This will work effectively with the teachers and their resources, a parent willing to support, and most importantly, a student who's prepared and motivated to apply themselves to this correctly. It cannot work without the student. It is hard work, but we are preparing you for the world of work, and the world of work requires you to work hard.